In 1882, a young Chinese laborer named Wang was lowered in a wicker basket down a sheer granite cliff face in California's Sierra Nevada mountains. His job was to drill holes into solid rock, pack them with nitroglycerin, light the fuse, and hope the men above hauled him up before the explosion turned him to dust. Thousands never made it back up. Yet the railroad companies kept no official death records for Chinese workers. Their bodies were sometimes left where they fell, buried under the very tracks they died to build. Why did America's most dangerous jobs attract the people with the fewest choices? And how did their sacrifice create the nation we live in today? The answer is not just about progress. It is about who paid the price for it. Before highways stretched across the continent, before electricity lit American homes, before steel towers pierced city skylines, there was brutal, back-breaking labor performed by men, women, and sometimes children who understood that their lives were worth less than the industries they served. These were not jobs people chose for adventure. They were jobs people took because they had no other options. Immigrants fresh off boats, former slaves seeking any wage, and families desperate to survive another winter. The deadliest occupations in American history did not just build railroads and bridges, they built the economic foundation of the most powerful nation on earth. Every beam, every mile of track, every ton of coal came at a cost measured not in dollars, but in human lives. The Transcontinental Railroad remains one of America's greatest engineering achievements, a 1,900-mile ribbon of iron connecting the Atlantic to the Pacific. What history textbooks often skip is the staggering human toll. Between 1863 and 1869, an estimated 1,200 Chinese laborers died building the Central Pacific Line alone. Some historians place the number far higher, perhaps as many as one worker for every 2 miles of track laid through the Sierra Nevada. The work was relentless. Crews carved tunnels through granite using hand drills and black powder, later switching to the far more unstable nitroglycerin. Avalanches buried entire work camps. Rock slides swept men off cliff faces. In winter, temperatures plunged below zero, and workers slept in tunnels carved from snow, sometimes waking to find their tent mates frozen beside them. The Central Pacific kept almost no records of Chinese deaths. When bodies were recovered, bones were often shipped back to China in bulk, a final journey that families paid for themselves. Irish workers on the Union Pacific faced different but equally deadly hazards. The Eastern Line pushed across the Great Plains through territory controlled by Native American tribes defending their homeland. Attacks were common. So were accidents involving the heavy equipment and explosives used to grade the land. Disease swept through camps with devastating regularity: cholera, smallpox, and dysentery. Medical care was primitive at best. A broken leg or infected wound often meant death. The railroad companies calculated these losses as acceptable overhead, the price of building a nation in record time. Deep beneath the hills of Pennsylvania and West Virginia, coal miners descended into darkness every morning, knowing some of them would not return. By the early 1900s, coal powered nearly every locomotive, factory, and furnace in America. It also killed an average of 2,000 miners every year. The dangers were almost too numerous to count. Methane gas accumulated in poorly ventilated shafts, turning a single spark into a fireball that could kill dozens in seconds. Roof collapses buried men alive, sometimes trapping survivors in pockets of air where they waited days for rescue that often came too late. Coal dust itself was a killer, settling in lungs and slowly suffocating miners over years. A condition so common it earned its own name: black lung. The Monongah mine disaster of 1907 remains the deadliest in American history. An explosion ripped through 2 connected mines in West Virginia, killing 362 men and boys, some as young as 10. The blast was so powerful, it shot debris hundreds of feet into the air. Rescue crews worked for days, pulling bodies from tunnels choked with gas and rubble. Many victims were immigrants from Italy and Eastern Europe, men who spoke little English and understood even less about the dangers they faced. Mine owners rarely faced consequences. Safety regulations were weak and enforcement weaker. When workers organized to demand better conditions, they were met with violence. The Battle of Blair Mountain in 1921 saw 10,000 armed miners face off against company guards and even U.S. Army troops. Progress came slowly, written in blood and measured in generations. Steel mills lit up the night skies of Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Gary like man-made volcanoes. Inside these infernos, workers labored in temperatures exceeding 130 degrees, tending furnaces that melted iron ore into the steel beams and rails that built modern America. The Bessemer process, and later the open hearth method, revolutionized production, but working conditions remained medieval. Molten metal at 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit flowed through channels just feet from where men stood. A stumble, a slip on the oil-slicked floor, meant falling into liquid fire. Explosions from moisture hitting molten steel could spray burning metal across entire work areas. 12-hour shifts were standard, sometimes stretching to 24 hours during peak demand. Exhausted workers made fatal mistakes. Between 1906 and 1910, nearly 200 men died at U.S. Steel's Southworks plant alone. The company's own records showed an injury rate of 1 worker hurt for every 3 employed. Many of these injuries, lost limbs, severe burns, crushed hands, ended careers, but did not count as deaths. The true toll was far higher than any official number captured. Immigrant workers, particularly those from Southern and Eastern Europe, filled the most dangerous positions. They worked closest to the furnaces, handled the heaviest loads, and cleaned the most hazardous equipment. Language barriers meant safety instructions went unheard. Cultural expectations meant complaints went unspoken. The steel that built America's skyscrapers, bridges, and warships was forged by men whose names rarely appeared anywhere except the accident reports. In the forests of the Pacific Northwest and the Great Lakes region, loggers faced dangers that came not from machines or explosions, but from gravity and the unpredictable behavior of 200-foot trees. Timber was king in 19th century America. Wood-built homes, railroad ties, ships, and factories. Getting it out of remote forests required crews to live in isolated camps for months at a time, far from doctors or hospitals. Felling a giant redwood or Douglas fir was an act of controlled destruction that often went uncontrolled. A tree could twist as it fell, kicking back the butt end with enough force to kill a man instantly. Widowmakers, dead branches lodged in the canopy, dropped without warning. Once trees were down, the work only grew more dangerous. Logs weighing tons rolled downhill toward rivers and rail lines, crushing anyone in their path. River drives sent thousands of logs downstream in chaotic tangles. Log jams could release suddenly, sweeping men into churning water where they drowned, trapped beneath floating timber. Statistics from the period are incomplete, but logging consistently ranked as the deadliest occupation in America well into the 20th century. In 1915, the fatality rate for loggers was over 5 per 1,000 workers, higher than mining, higher than construction. Camps had their own graveyards. Many headstones bore only first names or nicknames. These were men who had left families behind, seeking wages in the wilderness. When they died, there was often no one to claim them. Chicago's meatpacking district was an empire of blood. By the 1900s, the Union stockyards processed over 80% of America's meat, employing more than 40,000 workers in a square-mile maze of slaughterhouses, rendering plants, and refrigerated warehouses. Upton Sinclair's 1906 novel, The Jungle, shocked the nation with its depiction of conditions inside. But even Sinclair admitted he had aimed for the public's heart and hit its stomach instead. The real horror was what happened to the workers. Men stood for hours in freezing rooms or sweltering killing floors. Knives slipped on fat and blood, slicing hands and arms. Workers fell into rendering vats and were not discovered until their remains surfaced in the product. Tuberculosis, known as consumption, spread easily in the close quarters. So did a condition workers called pickled hands, chemical burns from the preservatives used to process meat. The pace of disassembly lines demanded speed over safety. A moment's hesitation could mean a finger lost to a bandsaw, an arm caught in grinding machinery. Immigrant workers, many from Poland, Lithuania, and other Eastern European nations, made up the bulk of the labor force. They worked 10-hour days, 6 days a week, for wages that barely covered rent in the cramped tenements surrounding the yards. When Sinclair's book triggered public outrage, the response was the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906, a law designed to protect consumers, not workers. Meaningful protections for meatpackers would take another half-century. Beneath the streets of New York, a different kind of army labored in conditions few surface dwellers could imagine. They called themselves sand hogs, the tunnel workers who dug the subway lines, water tunnels, and bridge foundations that made the modern city possible. The work combined the worst dangers of mining with unique hazards all its own. Digging beneath rivers and harbors meant working in pressurized chambers to hold back the water. Decompression sickness, the bends, crippled workers who ascended too quickly, leaving them paralyzed or dead as nitrogen bubbles formed in their blood. The underwater tunnels for the Brooklyn Bridge claimed at least 20 lives and left dozens more permanently disabled. Cave-ins were constant threats. Unlike mines, where rock offered some structural support, tunnel workers often dug through loose sand and mud that could collapse without warning. In 1916, a blowout in a Hudson River tunnel sent pressurized air bursting through the riverbed, flooding the chamber and killing 3 men. Others were struck by the massive machinery used to bore through rock, caught between tunnel walls and moving equipment. Water Tunnel Number 3, still under construction after more than 50 years, has claimed 24 lives since work began in 1970. It remains one of the largest infrastructure projects in American history, a testament to both engineering ambition and the ongoing human cost of keeping cities alive. The first oil boom turned western Pennsylvania into a landscape of wooden derricks and open flames. When Edwin Drake struck oil near Titusville in 1859, he launched an industry that would transform the world. He also created one of America's deadliest occupations. Early oil fields were chaos. Wells gushed uncontrollably, spraying crude oil across workers and equipment. The slightest spark, from a cigarette, a metal tool striking rock, or even static electricity, could ignite an inferno. Entire boom towns burned to the ground. In 1861, the first major oil fire at the Rouse Well killed 19 men and burned for 3 days. There were no safety standards, no regulations, and no fire departments capable of handling petroleum blazes. As the industry expanded to Texas, Oklahoma, and California, so did the death toll. The Spindletop Gusher of 1901 launched the Texas oil boom and a new era of industrial accidents. Rotary drilling brought new hazards: heavy equipment, high-pressure blowouts, and toxic hydrogen sulfide gas that could kill in a single breath. Roughnecks, as the workers called themselves, earned high wages precisely because the work was so dangerous. A man could make more in a month on a drilling rig than a factory worker earned in 6 months. He could also lose a hand to the spinning machinery, get crushed by falling pipe, or vanish in an explosion that left nothing to bury. The oil that powered American cars, heated American homes, and fueled American wars was extracted by men who understood their work could kill them any day. Today, every bridge you cross, every subway you ride, every building you enter stands on a foundation laid by workers who knew the risks and took them anyway. Modern safety regulations, hard hats, harnesses, and unions exist because earlier generations demanded them, often at the cost of their own lives. The transformation did not happen overnight. It came through decades of disasters, investigations, strikes, and slow legislative progress. OSHA was not established until 1970. Mine safety laws with real enforcement did not arrive until after more catastrophic explosions. The deadliest jobs in American history were not accidents of fate. They were the predictable result of an economy that valued production over people. That calculation has shifted, but it has not disappeared. Construction, logging, and commercial fishing still rank among the most dangerous occupations in the nation. Every year, workers still die building, harvesting, and extracting the resources that keep the country running. The difference is that now we count them. Their names appear in records, in news reports, in memorials. That is progress, measured in the slow recognition that the people who build a nation deserve to survive the building of it. The next time you look at a city skyline or drive across a bridge, remember the hands that built it. Not just the engineers who drew the plans or the investors who signed the checks, but the laborers who climbed into baskets, descended into mines, and stood before furnaces so hot the air itself could burn. Their sacrifice is not ancient history. It is the foundation beneath your feet right now. What risks does our economy still overlook? Share your thoughts below.